Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. I hope you folks are doing well out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your day and a great beginning to your weekend out there. Here to break down the latest on what's going to happen weather-wise for your day. We have a shot at strong to severe storms across areas of the country. Portions of the south and portions of the north are under risk of strong to severe storms, so we'll speak on that. A little bit of a flash flooding risk across areas of the south also. So we'll talk in detail on all that information, and then we'll break down the rest of the lower 48 like we always do. And then after that, we'll start to move into our Sunday tomorrow, which now has an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5 for strong to severe storms across the Central Plains, really bullseyeing kind of Kansas and surrounding states. So we'll speak on that and have a timestamp up for that for you folks just to jump ahead to if you want to, if you live in Kansas and you're tuning in. And then we'll start to move into Monday onward, going into next work week, where I think we're going to have a multi-day stretch of higher end severe weather potential. You know, I always say this, you got level 1 through level 5, okay? Level 1 out of 5, level 2 out of 5, etc., right? But once you start to get to that level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk and then higher, that's when you really need to pay attention. And don't get me wrong, you got a marginal risk of severe weather, a slight risk, level 1, level 2. You always need to pay attention regardless to the weather. But once you get to that orange, that level 3 enhanced risk and higher, that's when things are starting to get a lot more serious. And I think we're going to have multiple days of that next week, really starting tomorrow. And we could have that for the foreseeable future into next week. I think we're going to have maybe a moderate risk day, especially for Tuesday, where there's already an enhanced risk up for a pretty large area. So we're going to speak on all that. About half this video, the second half of this video, is going to be into discussing next week's severe weather potential, what's driving it, all the ingredients, and all that stuff that we like to break down here on this channel. So skip ahead if you need to. Take advantage of those timestamps. I know my videos are very long. That's just how we do it here on this YouTube channel. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if you ever consider joining the channel, it's a great way to support what I do. I have over 40 members that support my channel unconditionally, so I just want to say thank you, to you guys for and everybody who has chose to do it that way. But as always, thank you for the people who just support my channel by commenting and making this channel what it is, which is an awesome YouTube family atmosphere. I appreciate y'all so much. But if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it, and so many others have an opportunity to pray over it too. So let's get rock and rolling this morning. So we got a lot of rain across the Mid-Atlantic, moving into the Delmarva region. We got scattered moisture across New England in the form of light rain, some pockets of heavier rain. And then we got a lot of action down here along the southern Gulf states. Got heavy rain and even storms moving through central Georgia. Numerous flash flood warnings ongoing. You guys just continue to get rounds after rounds after rounds of heavier rain and storm activity. A more compact area of shower and storm activity here along the surface low here in northeast Arkansas, western Tennessee, trying to creep into the Boot Heel, Missouri. It's definitely a stormy morning for you folks like in Memphis and surrounding areas. And then you head up a little bit further north into the upper Midwest and the western Great Lakes region. We do have this kind of tail whipping area of shower and storm activity and just kind of embedded pockets of heavier rain across Minnesota, moving into Wisconsin. I do think this area will have an opportunity to become a little bit more unstable later this afternoon with a little bit more clearing, and then we'll have the shot at strong to severe storms even up here. And then we got some moisture in North Dakota. The western U.S., pretty quiet. Not a whole lot going on. It's been pretty quiet out here for a while, especially for the Southwest. So that's what's going on right now. Watches, warnings, and advisories. Dense fog out here. Some dense fog advisories here in the dark gray or grayish colors right here. Flood watches up in this green color where, heavy rain continues to fall, and we'll get even more rain throughout the next 24 to 48 hours throughout the weekend just about. And if you look down here, there is, hopefully you can see it, there is some orange shaded counties down here in southern sections of Florida. We have heat advisories down here where it's just going to continue to be extremely hot. The heat index will approach well over 100 degrees by the time, you even get into lunchtime down here in South Florida. But this is, it's just typical kind of stuff for Florida. You're pretty deep into summer type conditions down here already. So there's nothing too unusual about that. The excessive rainfall outlook in the yellow, there's at least a 15% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles at any given point. But there's a pretty large area in green today across the southeast, mid-south that does have a risk of flash flooding. Certain areas could see some runoff, especially if storms just continue to go over some of the same regions. But all in all, today's risk not as high as the last 2 risk days in regards to a flash flooding. The Storm Prediction Center, you do have a level 2 out of 5 risk down here, a slight risk, and this is really for what's going on right now, all the way throughout the afternoon, evening hours. Now, you notice there was a slight risk all the way up here to North Carolina, through a good section of South Carolina, a little bit further, almost up to Atlanta, and yesterday's outlook for today's outlook. But just a large marginal risk now, going all the way up to the North Carolina VA border. Covering southern Tennessee, eastern Tennessee, all the way back here to Mississippi. And, if you live in the dark green area, the confidence for severe weather has dropped to a level 1 out of 5. But you are going to run the risk of strong to severe storms today, and we'll talk about that. But I think the higher risk down here is here in the yellow for sure. But you see this weird-looking little skinny level 1 out of 5 risk that goes all the way from Wichita through Kansas City, all the way up here to Lake Superior. Level 1 out of 5 risk of strong to severe storms becomes a little bit more conditional on the southern end of this. But up here in the northern mode of this, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a slight risk issued for today up here. There's definitely going to be some strong to severe storms up here for like Wisconsin, surrounding states later on this afternoon for sure. So let's talk about the southeast first, like we always do. Let's take a broad look at things, and then we'll zoom into a couple individual states. This morning, we're dealing with the shower and storm activity. This will continue to make its way through. So there's a couple things going on, and let's take it to about 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You still got rounds, kind of complexes of storms rumbling through Georgia, Florida. You see this energy down here. And then the secondary thing ongoing is you got storms forming kind of in the northern section of all this energy up here. We got strong to severe storm potential here in northern Alabama, areas of like northeastern Mississippi, even some storms popping up in central and north central Georgia. And then look up here in kind of the southern central Alps region, Virginia, Tennessee, eastern Kentucky. And then to keep this going, and I really think we're going to have a very stormy afternoon, evening in areas of western North Carolina. Like I said, Alabama, Georgia, areas of Tennessee. You got a lot of storm activity up here too. What it looks like it's kind of riding like a warm front. I would watch out for a sneaky tornado threat up here in upper areas of North Carolina, maybe southern Virginia. We'll see what happens, but there's a lot going on here. There's another area of showers and storms surging through northern Florida. A lot of storm activity right up against the eastern shorelines of Florida. A lot of storms just off the coastline. Another area of storms way out in the Gulf of Mexico. And look at this draping line of storms this evening across Alabama into northern Georgia, all the way into the Carolinas. Look at these storms. There's a lot going on. And then everything kind of, I would say fades out as we get into the overnight hours. Could still be left with some showers and storms in northern Florida. But a little bit closer look at this. And, we take it to about midday. This is around lunchtime, 1 p.m. There are those storms kind of draping across southern areas of Georgia. A stormy afternoon for sure if you got any outdoor activities. And then there's another round of showers and storms around 5 to 6 p.m. surging across the panhandle of Florida into the Big Bend coastline, into northern Florida. And then you see all this scattered activity up here in northern Georgia. These could be strong to severe too, even though there's just a marginal risk. That doesn't mean you can't get strong to severe storms. You can get strong to severe storms even in a general risk of thunderstorms. And you keep this going, and I think you'll get a little bit of a quieter period, maybe this evening across southern Georgia, northern Florida. And then you can have more strong to severe storms kind of get going after midnight tonight across northern Florida. Very possible, and just scattered activity to the north. A little bit. Let's take a look at how much rainfall is expected, because there is a slight risk down here for rainfall exceeding that flash flood guidance. Another 1 to 2 inches of rain is possible for southern southwestern Georgia, the panhandle of Florida. More scattered amounts once you get north of this. Areas of a 1/4 inch. You could get nothing, could get a 1/2 inch, could get an inch of rain once you get up here. Just more splotchy in nature. A little bit further north, up here in the Carolinas and Virginia, there's already shower and storm activity ongoing, more so just shower and bedded rain activity. But we start to get to about midday. Okay, there's probably some storm activity, heavy rain activity and the low country of South Carolina. But you can already see the development of some of those storms up here and then all along the southern apps. And then we start to get into this afternoon. And if we kind of switch this, let's look at this. Like this is kind of just only goes out 18 hours, but this is a couple, some more, I would say this is some more present runs. So it's more updated information in the near term. Looks very stormy. This is around 4 p.m. this afternoon. It looks like the atmosphere begins to recover, so you start to see more of those yellows and reds and oranges down here. So this indicates more stormy conditions, as opposed to just kind of widespread rain. And you can see these storms are popping up all across the Carolinas into Southwest Virginia, eastern Tennessee. Very stormy conditions in northern Georgia today. And you keep this going, and I do think you could get a little bit of a flash flooding risk in some of these areas where storms continue to go over some of the same areas. But some of these short-range models are really honing into the idea of this kind of stretched out area of storms across North Carolina into western North Carolina. And I just think you might be a little quiet this morning, kind of damp, humid. The sun might even come out and might be a great start to the day. But I do think regardless, this afternoon, showers and storms are going to be widespread, especially across the Carolinas for sure. So if you got any outdoor activities on some of the lakes and things like that, don't judge the entire day's forecast off what happens this morning, because you're going to get widespread storms that gets going later on this afternoon, this evening for sure. The Northeast today, waking up to widespread rains across the Mid-Atlantic, the Delmarva. I think we're just going to get kind of a showery day across areas of the Northeast, New England. As you can tell, just kind of, splotchy areas of green across the Northeast. Could get a stronger thunder shower or storm. I wouldn't even say a stronger storm, but could get a storm back here in central PA, the southern tier of New York. And to keep this going and getting this afternoon, getting to this evening, here's that opportunity right down here along the New York PA border for some thunder shower, storm activity, very possible. More so just widespread sprinkles, light rain, maybe some moderate rain across the immediate New England region. And then by the time we get into the overnight hours, could just be kind of a wet overnight hours across areas of the coastal regions of Maine, down east areas of Maine, all the way to southern Maine for sure. And then waking up tomorrow morning to still maybe some wet conditions kind of hugging that New England coastline from, maybe across the entire New England coastline. Just some kind of on and off sprinkles. Could be just cloudy. We just have to see what happens. The south central U.S., pretty quiet weather today. We're going to continue to deal with those showers and storms across northern Mississippi, but the immediate southern plains, south central U.S., getting to this afternoon, pretty chill conditions. It wouldn't be really chill. It's probably going to be quite warm, but you get what I'm saying. The only thing that I'm really seeing is some rain developing in areas of Colorado, eastern Colorado, and the approach of this short wave developing across areas of the central and southern Rockies. We could get some heavier shower activity that drifts into western Kansas. And then we're waking up tomorrow morning to probably, an area of energy across southern Nebraska, northern Kansas, kind of greeting us with a wet start in these areas of the country. Moving into the north central U.S., we're dealing with that activity this morning. I think we'll continue to deal with it throughout the late morning hours all the way to about lunchtime. And then you can see the energy up here in Canada, right? Watch what happens as we start to get into this afternoon. This is around 4 p.m. We start to get some storms really close to the Duluth area, northeast Minnesota. Look at these storms popping up in north central Wisconsin. And I do think they become a little bit more widespread as we start to get closer to the late afternoon, evening hours. You see these areas of yellow, orange, red. These are some storms, and some of these could be strong and severe. And even though it doesn't show any storms down here in Missouri, Kansas, very conditional threat, but there is a shot at some storm activity down here also. But, all this energy will progress through the UP of Michigan. Stephen, loyal viewer up here in the UP of Michigan for a few years now, you could get some storm activity later on tonight for sure. So definitely, keep your eye out on that. But a little bit closer look at my friends here in the UP of Michigan and the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes region. And this is, in fact, let's just look at the latest run. Let's see what this does. This probably won't go all the way into the overnight hours, but latest updated information, I wouldn't be surprised one bit. We get a quick spin up from these. I really wouldn't be. A little bit of a juiced up climatic atmosphere, a little bit of a tongue of moisture up here. Don't be surprised one bit if we get a tornado warning or two up here. Would not be surprised. But there's some storms in northern Wisconsin. We start to get into the late afternoon, the early evening hours. Storms rumbling through central and northern Wisconsin into the western UP of Michigan. And I mean, these could be quite intense. Look at these darker areas of red. Definitely some storm activity. Enough lift for it. It's around 8 to 9 p.m. Look at these storms rumbling through central Wisconsin. I mean, but seriously, I mean, look at the UP of Michigan. Some intense storms tonight for sure. Some frequent lightning. I'll have to watch out for these, okay? And then they'll keep going throughout the overnight hours across the UP of Michigan and then across southern sections of Wisconsin. So certainly be aware of these storms for sure. The western U.S., pretty quiet, tame conditions. Nothing really going on until we start to get the surface reflection of this, central to southern Rockies energy, this short wave that's going to develop this area of upper energy, kind of away from the main upper trough, digging down that we're about to speak heavily on. Could get some shower activity throughout south central Nevada, areas of Utah, Colorado. Some scattered showers are possible in the Pacific Northwest. And then we start to wake up tomorrow morning. Some higher elevation snow, Idaho, Montana, lower elevation rain. But all in all, not a whole lot of activity. Surface lows beginning to develop across Wyoming. It's pretty quiet. Temperatures. Man, it's going to be pretty nice for a good portion of the country. Downright hot in areas of Florida and certainly in Texas. I mean, even pretty hot, into the central to southern plains. But you're going to hang on to cooler temperatures in the mid-Atlantic. I mean, temperatures only into the 60s, maybe just hanging on to the upper 50s. Chilly day, chilly Saturday across areas of southern New England, especially the further you get into eastern sections of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, and southern Maine. It'll just hang on to the 50s. There's some areas that might not even get out the 40s, but very warm all the way into the Great Lakes region. I mean, 80s, a nice warm day up here. Midwest, 80s, maybe somebody will hit 90. And then the western U.S., a little bit cooler conditions because you have an upper trough digging down. So this lower pressure is going to provide cloudiness, some rain showers, higher elevation snow showers. Not cold by any means, but definitely not very warm. But then in the central to southern Rockies, almost said the Pacific Southwest, the desert Southwest, hot. I think Las Vegas hit 100 degrees yesterday, or either that was Phoenix. William, you'll have to let me know, but who lives in Las Vegas. But, the valley regions of California getting quite warm, and we're going to get some low 100s and probably in western and central Texas today, so very warm for sure. So moving forward and talking about the days to come in regards to severe weather, and one of those days is tomorrow, Sunday. There is an enhanced risk. You notice it's not for a huge area. It's right here in the heart of Kansas, level 3 out of 5. Garden City to Wichita, Dodge City, all the way, not quite to like Topeka. Topeka's in that slight risk, but enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5. Slight risk surrounding it, level 2 out of 5. But I do want to note there's a pretty large marginal risk too, stretching from, southwestern sections of Oklahoma all the way up into areas of southern North Dakota, extending all the way into areas of just about Illinois. And then there is a marginal risk of severe weather, level 1 out of 5 for Florida. We're not going to speak on that much, but this is really where all the action is going to be. So let's go on and just zoom into this. All right, here it is. Great graphic for you folks in Kansas. Shows all the towns and cities and communities in this area, in Hutchinson, Great Bend, Hayes, Pratt, Dodge City, Garden City. You run that enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5. Slight risk surrounding it and all the communities you see on this map. So what is this driven off of? Well, as of now, just a 5% risk of a tornado. So the enhanced risk really isn't driven off. It's not a tornado-driven enhanced risk is what I'm trying to say, but there is a 5% risk of a tornado. And of course, the confidence for tornadoes could increase and we might get a bump up to a 5 to a 10. As of now, all I'm seeing with this setup is a 5, but we'll see, okay? But the wind outlook looks to be pretty serious. In the red area, as we know, well, not everybody, because you could be a new viewer. And if you're, a regular, I go over this in detail every single time. I should be logged into my brain, but I still mix it up sometimes. But in the red area, there's a 30% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour within 25 miles in a given location. In the yellow, there is a 15% risk of that same criteria. But if you notice, there's a black outline region kind of going across the entire red area and across sections of the southwestern areas of the yellow area. That means that there's a separated 10% risk of significant severe weather. In this case, it's the wind outlook, so it's winds. So in this case, you got a 10% chance of significant winds, which the Storm Prediction Center considers 75 miles per hour or higher. So we have a shot at damaging winds for sure tomorrow, no doubt about it. And the structure of these storms certainly supports damaging winds. And that's actually what's driving the enhanced risk tomorrow is the winds. It's a wind-driven enhanced risk. But the hail risk could go up also to a 30%. But as of now, in the entire yellow area, you have a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. But you also have a hatch risk of hail. See, once again, the black outline region similar to the wind outlook, except this is shifted further west. There is a 10% risk of significant hail, which is 2 inch in diameter or larger. So there's going to be a shot at very large hail tomorrow. So we got to pay attention to that. So what does the HRRR model show for the evolution of these storms? And I know this is a pretty broad look at things. One thing I really wish Weather Bell would do is add, and you can see the U.S. regions. I wish they would add like a Central Plains option, which really just zooms into like eastern Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, upper portion of Oklahoma, just this area right here, but they don't have it right now. So we'll take a wide look at this. So we'll start off around 1 p.m. tomorrow, Central Time. There already is some showers, maybe some storm activity ongoing in areas of the upper Midwest and Midwestern states. What about the plains? Well, here comes the energy. Look at all these storms. You got a line of storms stretching from South Dakota, even a complex of storms up here along the North Dakota, South Dakota state line. But look at these storms rumbling through the western half of Nebraska and Kansas, western half of Kansas. See these storms right here? They will continue. And these storms right down here is what's really driving that enhanced risk, right? You see this complex of storms. But I wanted to show you this wide look at this because I want you to notice this line of storms way up here, all the way into southern South Dakota also. Look at this cell in like central Iowa too, kind of east of Des Moines. You want to watch out for that. Even some storms here in areas of the Midwest, the Ohio Valley. But you want to watch out for all of these. And these will continue to rumble all the way through the late evening hours tomorrow. This is tomorrow around 11 p.m. Central Time. You got a lot of activity moving into Minnesota. Eastern sections now of South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas. And I do think all this activity will continue to trail off into tomorrow night. This is like the middle of the night. Tomorrow night, like 1 a.m. Monday, a lot of storm activity up here into Minnesota. I do think they're lacking ingredients for a lot of severe weather with this. Down here, not so much. But, to take a little bit closer look here at Kansas, for example, we'll back it up to the 06Z. And we'll look at this. This is today. We'll take it all the way to tomorrow. Here's a closer look at this complex of storms. You see this? This could be packing a punch, moving right through the heart of Kansas. This could produce, what we call a windbag situation, weather terms, which is basically a situation where you got a complex of storms producing damaging winds. And this could certainly be, lashing right through Kansas. It could affect areas of southern Nebraska too. You see those storms up here. So these are the storms, and if you're wondering about the time frame, this is around 5 p.m., 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 p.m. tomorrow p.m. pretty much. So we'll definitely zoom into this again in the next video and talk about a couple other things. But this is potentially how the radar could look tomorrow after lunchtime for the Central Plains. So when we move forward, we're moving into day 3. All right, so this is for Monday. As of now, just a slight risk, but I could very well see this being upgraded to an enhanced risk. Just confidence isn't there to do it right now. But we do have a slight risk, a level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather across some of the same similar areas, except it's extended a little bit further east and northeast. So this does include Des Moines, Omaha, Lincoln, Kansas City, down to Wichita, and Topeka, and all these other regions in this yellow area that you can't see. As of now, all we know is that there's a 15% chance of severe weather within 25 miles in any given location for Monday. So that's all we know right now. So moving forward, what about Tuesday? If you tune into last night's video, I mentioned the potential of them upgrading this to an enhanced risk this morning or tomorrow morning. They've already done it this morning. So you already know their confidence is on the higher end of severe weather occurring for the Midwest. They already have an enhanced risk for day 4, level 3 out of 5. So this has room to grow in confidence, right, to a moderate risk. So unfortunately for my friends here in the Midwest, I mean, Des Moines to Peoria, Springfield, Illinois, down to almost Springfield, Missouri, not quite though, almost down to St. Louis. This includes Kansas City. Enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5 in this orange 30% region. This means you have a 30% shot at severe weather within 25 miles in any given location. But don't ignore the slight risk area either, the 15% yellow region. This means you have a level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather at day 4, stretching from almost Green Bay all the way down to the Red River here in the Texas-Oklahoma line, almost all the way down to Little Rock. Yeah, Tuesday really has the potential to be a big day for severe weather. It's always been kind of the day I've been watching for the higher end day, but big day for sure. Now you go into day 5, which is for next, I'm going to make sure I don't get it wrong, next Wednesday. It says predictability too low, but there's no doubt in my mind that we will have severe weather potential for next Wednesday. It's just the confidence isn't really particularly high enough to issue already a slight risk, okay? But it is already high enough for day 6, guys. This is getting all the way into next Thursday. They already have for day 6, next Thursday, a slight risk of severe weather for areas, basically the entire Texarkana region, northern Louisiana, the entire southwestern areas of Arkansas, northeastern Texas, and southeastern Oklahoma and the central Oklahoma. Already a slight risk of severe weather up. So that tells you, hey, confidence already high on this pattern, right? So let's go on and move it to as far as breaking down this pattern, okay? So I'm just going to break down the GFS. I've been breaking down the Euro, but what you're looking at here is the 500 millibar chart. And I always say this for any new viewers that are interested here. The oranger colors here, that is a ridge of high pressure. It's just higher pressure, right? The bluer colors, that's lower pressure. So orange colors, looks like warmer colors on your screen, right? Well, it indicates more stable conditions, not as active weather. Sinking air typically, has warmer than average temperatures associated with it. These areas in blue, like even this area, it's a good example of this, right? This is for Sunday morning, 12Z Sunday. So that stands for Sunday morning in Zulu time. It makes sense. You got this little splotch of blue right here. And sure enough, we're going to have unsettled weather across the weekend, across the southeast. And this kind of symbolizes that well, right? But if you look at this blue area right here, this is just an area of low pressure. We couldn't call it a trough of low pressure, an upper trough. Just energy. I like to use that word a lot. It's more of a simpler term of things. But this area right here is really what's on the way that's going to drive a pretty active setup. Now, one thing you don't see on this map very well is there's energy right here across the central and southern Rockies too. We call this just some upper energy, a short wave trough. Just energy that's going to provide a lifting mechanism for thunderstorms and basically kind of pull kind of further north the ingredients for severe weather. But you're actually going to see it well, and this is the reason why I'm showing the GFS. As we continue to move into Sunday midday, tomorrow about midday, 1-2 p.m. All right, you notice there's an extension kind of south of this white area right in here. Typically, you have the orange area a little bit closer to the blue area, but there's this dip right here, the white area. That tells me there is some energy right in here. And sure enough, as you get into late tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, there it is. You see this blue area right here, kind of right over Kansas. Remember, that's right where we have that enhanced area. And one thing you'll notice also is you see these lines. You see how they kind of buckle and kind of just bend right in here? That's symbolizing energy in the atmosphere at 500 millibars. So that tells us that you probably got storm activity, and where all these lines kind of get very wiggly right in here, you got a lot of energy right here. Energy meaning storms. You can see it up here too, closer to the main upper trough. You see these kind of bending, looks like a heartbeat here, bending lines that's indicating just energy right into this region. You can see all the bends right here across the plain. So I think the GFS, as far as tropical tidbits, shows a much better example than the last couple of videos of the energy in the atmosphere, right? And there's basically energy, and this energy is basically creating kind of a secondary mid-level jet down here, okay? So we get past this, this energy will continue to kind of eject across the Midwest, right? This will likely continue to provide shower and storm activity late Sunday night all the way into Monday morning into the upper Midwest. And then we start to get into Monday afternoon. All right. The severe weather area, as far as the potential for a risk of severe weather, doesn't move much because in general, that upper energy kind of ejects, northeastward. But the main trough isn't really moving a whole lot. So at this point, you see this energy down here. This kind of combines and phases with this upper trough at this point. So we got another impulse of energy kind of into this area moving across the central plains. It's probably, somewhere into here, kind of going to move into this area right into here. Okay. And then you get this off your map and we continue to move this. With each, and I want to draw something else. With each ejecting energy, you get a pull and a surge northward of low-level moisture. Higher dew points in the 60s, even 70s in some cases, pretty far south down here. So with each little area of energy, and just draw little squiggly lines, ejecting off this trough across the southern and central Rockies into the plains, you get a like I said, kind of a surge northward of just favorable thermodynamics, which, guys, when I say thermodynamics, I'm talking about how humid it is when you walk outside. In response to those higher humidity levels, higher dew points, how much energy do you have in the atmosphere as far as CAPE levels, storm fuel, your lapse rate, which we're not going to dive much into right now. We typically look at that kind of stuff a little bit closer to the event. And of course, with an upper trough, what kind of kinematics do you have? And you have this flow already developing across this region, a southwesterly flow, kind of a secondary southwesterly flow kind of down here. Okay, so you get this back off your screen and you continue to move to about Monday afternoon, Monday evening. You see these kind of ripples right in here. There's some energy in the atmosphere. I wouldn't be surprised if they shift the risk area from Monday maybe a little bit further west. It just depends on how the models act as far as this ejecting energy. But what I'm trying to say is there's energy kind of moving across this region, right? Typically in the white area, between the blue area, lower pressure, and the orange area, higher pressure, that is where all your energy is ejecting off the eastern base or the eastern side of this trough. Okay, that's kind of the road network, the avenue. You got energy actually dropping down into here too, and then eventually ejecting off the eastern side of this trough, which is this blue area. This is what happens. And you get this flow around the ridge. It actually helps pull this north too. There's flows around low pressure and high pressure are the same. We talk about that heavily in hurricane season when we're talking about what steers these tropical systems. Now, Tuesday, getting into Tuesday morning, this is a much better example of what's driving in what is likely going to be such a higher end severe weather risk. You look at the trough here, right? This is we're back on Monday evening. Okay. The trough is sort of bending this way. Tells me this is still positively tilted. Okay. Get this off your screen. We'll move all the way into about Tuesday midday. Let's go about Tuesday morning. Okay, at this point, the trough still has a little bit of a positive tilt to it, but it's starting to become what we call more vertically tilted or neutrally tilted, which means it's tilting straight down. Okay, so it's moved from a positive tilt to a neutral tilt, which means it's in the process of a strengthening trough, an ejecting trough. So you see this secondary area of blue right here. This is an ejecting area of energy with a surface low associated with it at the base of this, right across the northern, I would say, the upper portion of the Great Plains. And then you got other areas of energy embedded into this, another area of energy up here, embedded into this main upper trough. Very hard to explain sometimes. So once again, we get into Tuesday afternoon into Tuesday evening. You see all these squiggly lines right in here, little splotches of blue. This is where there's a lot of energy in the atmosphere right here. And sure enough, it's right between the orange and right between the blue. Okay, it's going to be some sort of surface low somewhere in here, ejecting across the area, right across this trough. And you're going to have a surge of low-level moisture getting pulled northward because of all these surface features that are going to be just kind of ejecting northeastward. And this is bringing in a ripe southerly flow, bringing in all the ingredients into this region. And at this point, as we're getting into Tuesday PM, we have a very broad and very strong southwesterly flow right over this region, which is basically overlapping a very moist atmosphere. And the reason you're getting this southwesterly flow, because remember, flow goes around these areas of low pressure like this, right? So, of course, all your flow is coming down like this in the upper levels of the atmosphere and going like this, except this big arrow I just drew is a little bit further northwest. So when I'm saying flow, you're thinking, well, what does that mean? Well, that's providing wind energy, lift in the atmosphere over a very ripe and moist atmosphere for thunderstorms. So what we call that overlapping ingredients, overlapping kinematics and thermodynamics. And then we have to figure out where's the best overlapping ingredients going to be. And then that's where your highest risk for strong to severe storms is going to be. A lot of little mesoscale features you got to pay attention to that, add into the complex nature of trying to forecast these events. But you can see this area right in here where the isobars get a little tight, splotches of blue, buckling of these lines. That tells us where your energy. You got another area of energy coming through here, right here. So I think there's going to be another impulse of energy, probably late Tuesday night into Wednesday. And sure enough, you start to get into Wednesday, there's probably going to be some energy right into here once again. So I do think there's going to be another lower end severe weather threat, probably across the Midwest once again. But we got to watch. And then we get into Thursday afternoon, right? Gets a little weird, but you can see it. Another kind of upper trough digs down. Energy ejects off this trough down here. And you can see little splotches of blue, little circle nature here in these lines. Tells us there's energy in the atmosphere next Thursday evening. And sure enough, there is a 15% risk area. So I know that's probably difficult to follow. I understand. Sometimes it's difficult to explain. But a better way of probably looking at this is the actual energy in the atmosphere here. When we're looking at Sunday morning and we're getting into Sunday afternoon, this is what I'm talking about kind of a secondary mid-level flow. You see this area right in here? 40, 45, 50 knot mid-level flow, kind of splotchy in nature. See just basically this area of highlighted colors in here and this main area right in here. Just ignore this. We're not talking about this. This main area right here is really driven off the upper trough. This is really driven off kind of an upper area of energy in the central and southern Rockies that's going to move across the plains and create that enhanced risk of severe weather across this region. You see this flow going right over Kansas? This is where your best overlapping ingredients is going to be because you're going to have that surge of low-level moisture into this region too. Okay, and then we start to get into Monday. Let's see, Monday morning, Monday afternoon. This is when an area, kind of a southern shortwave off the coast of California, begins to phase with our upper trough to the north. The northern and southern stream energy beginning to combine right here. And as they do, confidence is a little bit lower on severe weather, but you're going to probably have a risk of strong to severe storms across the central plains as you kind of have like an exit region of this jet beginning to enter out of the Rockies into the plains. So you're probably going to have just enough lift for thunderstorm development into this region. But how much lift are you going to have for Monday? I think that might be a big question for Monday as far as this thunderstorm is going to develop. But I want you to watch as we get into, and if you're wondering what this map is, it's the 500 millibar wind flow basically. So these are winds, 500 millibars, 18,000 feet up in the air. It's really a great thing to look at when you're talking about how much wind energy is in the atmosphere. But as you notice, we start to get into Tuesday morning. We start to get this more consolidated, large, broad area of mid-level flow approaching 60, 70, 80 knots in certain areas. And this is when you're going to have the full all-out ejection of this upper trough. We get into Tuesday afternoon, prime heating of the day. There's this trough ejection over this area, surface low associated, strengthening surface low in response to an amplifying trough. And 70 to 80 knot mid-level flow riding right over areas of the eastern plains, getting into the Midwest. So you look at this and you say, hey, what am I looking at, Mitch? Well, you're looking at a lot of wind energy for damaging winds. You're looking at plenty of lift in the atmosphere for thunderstorm development right over this region. So, of course, this is overlapping a very ripe, moist atmosphere, which is what I'm about to show you guys. But let's go on and extend this a little bit into our Wednesday and Thursday, because those are going to be severe weather days also. And we get into our Wednesday afternoon, I do think there's going to be a shot at strong and severe storms across this area too. I think a cold front will be surging through the upper Midwest, but we'll certainly see what happens there. But then we have these other impulse of energy as we get into Thursday afternoon based off, and this is the Euro. But you see all this mid-level flow down here. Of course, when you have mid-level flow this far south, even if it's just 50 to 60 knots, it's definitely going to be plenty of moist air down here. So no problem having overlapping conditions for severe weather. You see these little squigglies in the lines, even on the Euro. It's a little bit further north than the GFS, but in general, severe weather expected across the Texarkana region, the southern plains, and the south central U.S., Arkansas, Oklahoma, etc. So we're going to watch this and how this progresses eastward into the eastern U.S. late in the next week. And then you look at the surface moisture in response to all of these surface features ejecting off this trough and all of this, right? Sunday afternoon, you got dew points well into the 60s all the way up into Kansas, even areas in Nebraska, southern Iowa, right? So you got that little bit of flow that we just talked about for Sunday riding over Kansas, riding over a pretty moist atmosphere. Dew points in the 60s is plenty moist for the plains. And then we start to get into Monday. You know, the sector for moist air begins to broaden and extends, all the way from the plains all the way into the Great Lakes region. And I do think the impulse of upper energy will surge into the Great Lakes region and actually help. If you notice, you can see what happens here, right? Like you look at, this is late tomorrow night, right? Pretty dry air, dew points in the 40s in general. And then watch as we start to get into Monday afternoon. It's replaced with pretty moist air for Great Lakes standards for this time of the year. Dew points in the 60s all the way up into Green Bay, because you have an area of energy that is still kind of riding through this region. It's weakening, but this is kind of yanking in that Gulf of Mexico moisture all the way into the upper Midwest. And then you have another impulse of energy, and you can see it with how this low-level moisture is kind of getting pulled and almost yanked northwestern to the northwest right here, and areas of western Kansas and southwestern Nebraska. So this is another area of energy. Okay, and then we start to get into our Tuesday. This video is a very long one. Didn't realize how long I've been talking at this point, but all the way into the Midwest, this is where we could have our big severe weather day. And you can see it. Dew points all the way into the mid-60s based off the Euro, all the way into Minneapolis, and just a huge area in this region with higher end moisture at the surface, in the surface levels, just ready to really amplify those Cape levels. Okay, and then we start to get into Wednesday afternoon. Cold front, like I said, begins to kind of blast through the Great Lakes region, really stabilizes the atmosphere, cuts off that moisture, and it's symbolized well off the 500 millibar chart. But you still got a lot of moist air down here. And I do think there's just going to be some form of severe weather Wednesday across this area. But it's really as we get into Thursday, that moisture begins to kind of re-amplify. It never really goes anywhere in Texas and areas further south. But Thursday afternoon, a lot of moist air, dew points in the 60s and 70s. That mid-level flow reintroduces itself across this area of the country. And that's why you already have a 15% risk of severe weather for Thursday. Okay. Last thing you'll look at, and we'll kind of zoom through this pretty quick because this is subject to change in response to waves of moist air getting pulled north from the south. Of course, typically the higher your dew points, the higher your Cape levels when you have a chance for the atmosphere to become unstable. So you look at Sunday afternoon, Cape levels. Just look at these areas of colors, especially when you see these oranges and reds, dark oranges. Just look at that and say, hey, okay, there's plenty of fuel in the atmosphere. Okay, you don't need 3,000 joules per kilogram mixed layer Cape to get storms. Okay, so you got it for Sunday. You get into Monday. You got it again. A little bit of a dry line setup. Could have a more heightened area of severe weather once again for Kansas 2 days in a row. You get into Tuesday. This really builds a little bit further eastward across areas of the Midwest and then the southern plains, south central U.S. Looks like a dry line setup across areas of Oklahoma for a cold front sweeps through, but higher in Cape values across a very moist atmosphere in this region. And then we get into Wednesday. This is when that cold front kind of surges through the Midwest and the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region, but you still got this tongue of favorable Cape levels all the way into the Ohio Valley. So you watch for Wednesday And then you look at Thursday. It's the last thing we'll look at, and we'll wrap up this 45-minute video. Absolutely ridiculous, Mitch. Come on, man. But the Southern Plains, lot of energy in the atmosphere with that mid-level flow riding over this area, which is why you had that 15% risk of severe weather. Whew, that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and y'all have a wonderful Saturday.